Imagine a man who lived more than 4 centuries ago, yet his words still breathe in our world today. His phrases echo in movies, books, classrooms, and even in the conversations we have every single day. This man, born in a small, ordinary town, with no title and no fortune, became the most influential writer in the English language. His name? William Shakespeare. But here is the remarkable part. Shakespeare was not born into greatness. He wasn't raised in a palace. He never studied at a rich university, and no one expected him to achieve anything extraordinary. He started life as an ordinary boy, one of many children in a noisy household. And yet, through his hunger for stories and his gift for words, he rose to a place no one could have imagined. Think of the plays you may have heard about: Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello. These are not just old, dusty dramas on a shelf. They are alive with human emotion, love that burns too strongly, ambition that destroys, betrayal that cuts deep, and dreams that lift people higher than they thought possible. Shakespeare gave us mirrors of our own lives, showing the beauty and the pain of being human. Without him, English itself would not sound the same. So the question is, how did a boy with no wealth and no connections manage to leave such a mark on history? To discover the answer, we need to travel back to the very beginning of his life. It was April 1564 in Stratford-upon-Avon, a small English town with cobbled streets and timber-framed houses. The river Avon ran quietly through it, reflecting the rhythm of everyday life. People here lived simply, working as farmers, merchants, and craftsmen, their days shaped by the seasons and the market square. In one of those modest homes, John and Mary Shakespeare welcomed their newborn son. They could not have imagined that this child, wrapped tightly in a blanket against the cold spring air, would one day write words that would live forever. They named him William. John Shakespeare, William's father, was a glove maker who worked with care, shaping leather into fine gloves for the townspeople. He was hard-working and respected, though not wealthy. Mary, William's mother, came from a prosperous farming family. She was loving, practical, and strong, qualities that helped her care for her many children. William was the third of 8, and the household was always busy, filled with laughter, shouting, and the sounds of daily chores. Yet young William was different. He watched closely, listened carefully, and noticed things others ignored. How people spoke when they were angry, how they smiled when they were in love, how their voices trembled when they were afraid. This habit of observation, invisible to most, planted the seeds of his future genius. In those days, entertainment was not delivered through screens. There were no televisions, no internet, no phones. Instead, people told stories, sang songs, and welcomed traveling actors who performed lively plays in the streets or in inns. William's eyes would light up whenever performers came to town. He drank in every word, every gesture, storing them in his growing imagination. At 7 years old, William went to school. The classroom was simple: wooden benches, cold air, and a strict teacher who demanded attention. He studied Latin, history, poetry, and literature. He read the works of great Roman and Greek authors like Ovid, Plutarch, and Virgil. These tales of gods, heroes, and great battles shaped his young mind, filling him with ideas that would later find their way into his plays. But William was not only a scholar. He loved nature. He wandered through green fields, watched the river flow, and listened to birds singing high above. He played games in the streets with friends, laughed, and enjoyed childhood. Yet even then, something deeper stirred inside him, a hunger for words, for meaning, for stories that would outlive the moment. Life, however, was not easy. His father's business began to fail, and debts piled up. The family, once comfortable, now faced hardship. Some days they even struggled to put food on the table. William saw the stress in his father's tired eyes and heard the worry in his mother's voice. From these struggles, he learned that life is fragile and nothing is certain. Not money, not status, not even peace. Instead of breaking him, these challenges sharpened him. William turned emotions into words, making little poems and rhymes. He acted out roles with his friends, creating small performances to entertain them. No one in Stratford could have guessed that these playful moments were the beginning of something legendary. By the age of 14, William had absorbed more stories than most people hear in a lifetime. He had read deeply, listened widely, and watched countless actors perform. The lessons of hardship stayed with him, teaching him that even when everything else disappears, words and imagination remain. These truths shaped his spirit and would one day shape his place. Then, at 18, came another turning point. William fell in love. The woman's name was Anne Hathaway, wise, strong, and beautiful. She was 26, 8 years older than William, and in those days, such a match was unusual. But love has no rules, and William was certain of his feelings. Soon, and became pregnant before their wedding. In the strict society of the 16th century, this was a scandal that threatened the honor of both families. The solution was clear. They had to marry quickly. And so, in November 1582, at only 18 years old, William Shakespeare stood with Anne Hathaway and promised to spend his life with her. At that moment, he was not yet the legend we know today. He was not yet the voice of English literature. He was simply a young man, with dreams far bigger than his small town, stepping into adulthood with both love and uncertainty in his heart. William was still very young, barely beginning to understand his place in the world, when life surprised him with a new responsibility. He was about to become a father. Just half a year after his wedding, and gave birth to their first child, a little girl named Susanna. 2 years later, in 1585, and gave birth again, this time to twins, Hamnet and Judith. By the age of 21, William Shakespeare was not only a husband, but also the father of 3 small children. Life seemed to move forward with incredible speed, and with it came a heavy question. How would he take care of his growing family? His father's business was falling apart, money was scarce, and William himself had no secure profession. He could not imagine himself making gloves for the rest of his life, and he had no land or title to rely on. But what he did have was imagination, a gift for words, and a restless fire inside him that longed to create. Then came what historians now call the lost years, a mysterious period from 1585 to 1592. For 7 long years, no one knows exactly what Shakespeare was doing. There are no records, no letters, no documents to prove where he was or how he survived. It is as though he disappeared into the shadows, only to return years later transformed. Many theories exist. Some believe he worked as a schoolteacher, using his education to earn money by tutoring the children of wealthy families. Others suggest he joined a traveling group of actors, learning the craft of performance while moving from town to town. There are even rumors that he got into legal trouble, that he was caught poaching deer on the land of a powerful nobleman and had to flee. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain. By 1592, Shakespeare had reappeared in London, no longer just a small-town dreamer, but a man ready to conquer the stage. London at the end of the 16th century was alive with noise, trade, and ambition. It was the beating heart of England's theatre world, where poets, actors, and writers fought fiercely for fame and recognition. Into this crowded, competitive city walked William Shakespeare, with no wealth, no friends in high places, and no stage experience. Yet what he carried was more valuable than gold: unshakable determination, natural talent, and an unstoppable passion for storytelling. At first, he worked as an actor in small groups, studying everything: the way people moved on stage, how their voices carried emotion, how words could stir laughter or tears. Soon he began to write his own plays, simple comedies at first, meant to entertain. But as his skills grew, his writing deepened. He realized he could give audiences not only laughter, but also reflection, questions, and powerful emotions. By 1592, Shakespeare's name was beginning to spread through London's theaters. Yet not everyone welcomed him. The established playwright Robert Greene mocked him in a bitter pamphlet, calling him an upstart crow, a nobody who dared to act like a great writer. Instead of breaking him, those words pushed William to work harder. He wrote more, performed more, and slowly began to win the respect of both actors and audiences. Then disaster struck. In 1593, the plague swept across London, killing thousands. The theaters closed, and Shakespeare suddenly had no work. But he refused to give up. Instead, he turned to poetry, pouring his creativity into verse. He wrote 2 long narrative poems, Venus and Adonis and The Rape of Lucrece. These works not only saved his career, they made him wealthy and famous. Even Queen Elizabeth I herself admired his talent. When the theaters reopened in 1594, Shakespeare returned with renewed strength. He became part of a prestigious acting company called the Lord Chamberlain's Men. Now he was not only writing plays, but also performing in them. His works touched every human emotion: the burning love of Romeo and Juliet, the dangerous ambition of Macbeth, the betrayal and revenge of Hamlet, the jealousy and madness of Othello. By the late 1590s, Shakespeare had become one of the most famous playwrights in all of England. But he was far from satisfied. Success only fueled his hunger for more stories, more impact, more masterpieces that would live forever. In 1599, his ambition reached its peak. Together with his acting company, Shakespeare built a theater of his own, one that would change history: the Globe. Picture it, a vast wooden circle with an open roof, buzzing with excitement as crowds pushed inside, eager to watch. The stage set for unforgettable performances, the air filled with anticipation. This was not just a building. It was Shakespeare's kingdom, the place where his greatest dreams came alive. At the Globe, he gave the world his masterpieces: Hamlet, a haunting tale of revenge and madness; Macbeth, a chilling story of ambition and guilt; Othello, a heartbreaking drama of love and jealousy. Here, Shakespeare reached the height of his genius, and the theater became his home, his legacy, his crown. One of Shakespeare's most famous works during this time was Julius Caesar, a gripping political story filled with ambition, loyalty, and betrayal. His plays were not just a way to entertain people on long evenings. They touched hearts and minds. They made audiences laugh, cry, and question the meaning of life itself. With every new success, William's fame grew, but along with recognition came something else: great wealth. By the early 1600s, he was not just a celebrated writer. He was among the richest playwrights in England. Owning shares in the Globe Theatre meant that each performance brought him a steady stream of money. His plays and poems, printed and sold across the country, spread his name far and wide. Even the royal court admired his genius, and this brought him prestige few writers could ever dream of. With his fortune, Shakespeare invested in property, including a magnificent house in Stratford called New Place. At a time when most playwrights struggled to put food on the table, he enjoyed comfort, financial security, and respect. But for William, wealth was never the ultimate goal. Fame and fortune were only the beginning. He craved something greater: influence, legacy, and works that would outlive him. In 1603, the course of his life changed again. Queen Elizabeth I, who had supported Shakespeare and loved the theatre, died. Her throne was taken by King James I, and uncertainty filled the air. Would the new monarch embrace the stage or close the theaters forever? Shakespeare did not have to wonder long. To his relief, King James adored his plays. So much so that he granted Shakespeare's company a new and prestigious name, the King's Men. This was the highest honor for any group of actors and writers. It meant protection, money, and the privilege of performing directly for the royal court. From being the son of a struggling glove maker, Shakespeare had risen to become the king's chosen playwright, admired by nobles and loved by common people alike. Between 1603 and 1611, Shakespeare created some of his most profound works. These were not light comedies or simple stories. They were reflections of the deepest questions of human life. King Lear, a devastating tale of betrayal between a father and his daughters. Macbeth, a chilling portrait of ambition, guilt, and downfall. The Tempest, a poetic journey of forgiveness, hope, and new beginnings. His plays grew darker, richer, and more philosophical, shaped by his own experiences of fame, aging, and loss. By 1611, Shakespeare stood at the peak of his career. He was wealthy, respected by royalty, and honored as the greatest playwright in history. He had achieved more than he had ever dared to dream as a young man in Stratford. His stories had changed how people understood love, power, destiny, and human weakness. Yet, despite all this success, his heart longed for peace. In 1613, he made a surprising decision. He retired. After years of bustling life in London, of late nights writing by candlelight, of performing before cheering crowds, he returned home. He left behind the noisy city and came back to Stratford, to his beloved house New Place. Here, he sought quiet mornings, the sound of birds in the garden, and long walks through the green countryside. In Stratford, Shakespeare devoted himself to his family. He spent time with his daughters, Susanna and Judith, speaking of life, love, and the future. He welcomed visitors who traveled from London to seek his advice on plays and poetry. And even though he had retired from the stage, his imagination never rested. Neighbors said he would sometimes sit for hours by the fire, whispering lines of poetry to himself, lost in thought. But in 1616, fate intervened. One evening, after attending a lively dinner with friends filled with laughter, wine, and conversation, Shakespeare suddenly fell ill. Some said it was a fever, others believed it was a sickness brought on by the cold spring weather. Whatever it was, his health declined quickly. His family and friends gathered by his side, realizing that the greatest writer of all time was nearing the end. On April 23, 1616, William Shakespeare passed away at the age of 52. The world lost a genius, but his words lived on. Before his death, he had written his own epitaph, a short poem carved into his gravestone, warning anyone not to disturb his final resting place. Even in death, his words carried power and authority. When news of his passing spread, Stratford fell silent. At Holy Trinity Church, where he had once been baptized as a baby, townsfolk, actors, writers, and friends gathered to say their final goodbyes. There were no golden monuments or elaborate tombs, only a simple grave marked with his own words. Yet the simplicity carried more weight than any grand memorial could. And though his body rested beneath the stone, his spirit did not fade. Shakespeare's plays continued to be performed, his poems continued to be read, and his name echoed through history. Decades passed, then centuries, and still, his stories touched people across every continent. His works were translated into countless languages, proving that genius speaks a language understood by all. Shakespeare's stories have inspired countless generations of writers, poets, filmmakers, and dreamers all around the globe. From the bustling streets of London to the quiet villages of Africa, his influence can be felt everywhere. His words have become so ingrained in our culture that many phrases he wrote are now part of everyday life. Expressions like to be or not to be, all the world's a stage, and a rose by any other name would smell as sweet, are repeated in classrooms, theater performances, films, and even casual conversations between friends. Astonishingly, many people quote these lines without even knowing they are borrowing them from Shakespeare. That is the true magic and power of his words. His life serves as living proof that language can heal, inspire, and even change the world. The lessons he shared continue to resonate centuries later, reminding us that words are more powerful than we can imagine. Even more than 400 years after his death, Shakespeare's presence is everywhere. His plays are performed daily across continents, in theaters ranging from London's historic Globe to the bright stages of Broadway in New York, from small school auditoriums in Africa to grand opera houses in Asia. His work is studied in nearly every major university in the world, from Oxford and Harvard to universities in India, Japan, and Brazil. Even young children explore simplified versions of his plays, discovering the joy of storytelling at an early age. Beyond the classroom, his influence can be found in modern cinema. Directors such as Kenneth Branagh, Baz Luhrmann, and Julie Taymor have adapted Shakespeare's plays into critically acclaimed films, bringing his timeless stories to a global audience. Musicians, too, have woven his words into songs, while influential leaders, from politicians to activists, continue to quote him in speeches, recognizing the universal truths embedded in his work. Why is his influence so enduring? Because Shakespeare understood human nature better than anyone before or since. He knew that humans are driven by love, jealousy, betrayal, ambition, and dreams, themes that remain as relevant today as they were in the 16th century. Through Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare illustrated the beauty and tragedy of love, showing us how passion can lift us to the skies, yet also break our hearts in unimaginable ways. Macbeth explored the dangers of unchecked ambition, demonstrating how power can corrupt even the most honorable souls. In Julius Caesar, he revealed the fragility of trust and the devastating effects of betrayal, often coming from those closest to us. Hamlet confronted the uncertainties of life, the complexity of human emotions, and the difficult choices that define our paths. These lessons, deeply human and timeless, are why Shakespeare's stories are far more than mere entertainment. They are mirrors reflecting our desires, fears, joys, and struggles. They help us understand ourselves and the world we inhabit. Every line, every character, and every story carries lessons that remain profoundly relevant in modern life. And if Shakespeare were standing among us today, speaking to a new generation, his message would be simple yet powerful. Dream bigger than your fears. Tell your story, and never stop believing in yourself. Remember, he was just a boy from a small town in England, born into an ordinary family with no wealth, no noble title, and no influential friends. No one anticipated he would achieve greatness. Yet, within him burned one thing that changed everything: a dream. That dream, nurtured by his words and creativity, transformed him into one of the most celebrated writers in the history of humanity. His life proves that even the most ordinary beginnings can lead to extraordinary achievements if one has courage, determination, and imagination. Now, it is your turn. Each of us carries a spark, the same fire that once burned in Shakespeare. You have a voice that matters, a story waiting to be told, and a dream that deserves to live. Do not let fear silence you. Do not let the doubts of others hold you back. Because the truth is this: you can. You are stronger than you know, braver than your failures, and closer to achieving your goals than you realize. Every great name in history began with nothing, often doubted and underestimated, just as you might feel today. And yet, greatness was achieved. The path may not be easy, but it is possible, and it starts with one step. So, my wonderful friends, never stop chasing your dreams. Begin today. Take the first small step, however simple it may seem, and continue moving forward no matter the obstacles. Work hard, embrace learning at every opportunity, and refuse to give up even when the world seems against you. Like Shakespeare, you may face rejection, criticism, and challenges that seem insurmountable. Yet, it is precisely those challenges that build resilience, sharpen your skills, and prepare you for the greatness that awaits. One day, just like Shakespeare, your name too could echo through history, remembered and celebrated by people who have yet to be born. The world is waiting for your story, your creation, and your mark. Consider the countless lives Shakespeare touched, from the first audience at the Globe Theatre to readers and performers hundreds of years later. Imagine the students learning his plays in classrooms around the world, the actors performing his words on grand stages, and the filmmakers adapting his works into new forms. Every performance, every reading, every adaptation keeps his vision alive. And just like him, you have the ability to touch lives with your words, your art, and your ideas. Your story matters because it carries your truth and your voice. If this story inspired you even slightly, give this video a like to show that it reached your heart. Share your dreams in the comments below. Let's encourage and motivate one another. Subscribe and hit the bell icon, because together we are on a journey of growth, learning, and unstoppable creativity. Every step you take, every effort you make, brings you closer to the life you imagine. And always remember Shakespeare's timeless words: "It is not in the stars to hold our destiny, but in ourselves." His life proves that the power to shape your future lies within you, not in circumstances, not in luck, but in your courage and determination. So go forward, create boldly, dream wildly, and never forget. Maybe you are the next great storyteller, the next visionary artist, the next person whose words will inspire generations. Stay inspired, stay unstoppable, and I will see you in the next video. Because the truth is this: history remembers those who dare to dream, those who act on their passions, and those who refuse to let fear define them. You are capable. You are powerful. I'll see you in the next video.